So a lot of people out there seem to think that all deathcore sounds like Lorna Shore or Slaughter To Prevail. But once more, imagine if everyone thought that every death metal band sounded like 6 Feet Under.
Pick up the pieces of my destruction.
I think you'd be pretty upset about that. So again, I'm here to prove to the naysayers that this genre has far more to offer than you may think, and let's start from the beginning. Back in the 2000s, when deathcore was still a fresh and somewhat novel thing, bands like Suicide Silence and Whitechapel were dropping some of the most crushing albums out there with plenty of death metal roots in classics like The Cleansing and The Somatic Defilement. Bands like Job for a Cowboy, Despised Icon, and Carnifex were also running rampant, but if you want to hear a band from this earlier era that is still going strong, in my opinion, check out Infant Annihilator. They formed around 2012, but 2019's The Battle of Yaldabaoth was still plenty heavy enough to please most death metal fans out there who enjoy things like Cattle Decapitation. Also from this early era, and too often left out of the conversation, are the Red Chord. Formed all the way back in 1999, these guys were basically doing deathcore before that was even a label. If Whitechapel and Suicide Silence are the Burzum and Mayhem of this genre, think of the Red Chord as their Bathory. And much like how Bathory was born from thrash, the Red Chord spawned from the hardcore and mathcore scene I already talked about in my metalcore video. Even going so far as to frequently joke about how they don't really relate to the deathcore label with both their stage antics and interviews.
They were like, oh man, why would you say that? You really think that our fans are wiggers? And you look out in the crowd and there's the kid wearing the gym shorts with his hat, the flat rim hat tilted sideways, and he's going...
But all joking aside, their albums are packed with bangers, especially 2005's seminal Clients. Moving on to more modern sounds, let's talk about the growing field of symphonic deathcore. Now obviously Lorna Shore fits into this category, but if you ask me, there are far better bands in this subgenre who don't get talked about nearly as much, like Humanity's Last Breath and Winds of Plague. And for my money, the best of the best when it comes to the more dramatic style goes to Shadow of Intent, which I just think are a better band in every possible way. This group is basically what you get when deathcore fans grow up on a steady diet of Dimmu Borgir, and Francesco Ferrini of Flesh God Apocalypse has even been contributing to their most recent orchestrations. On the flip side, there's also a more bombastic, rhythm-infused side of this genre for the headbangers out there, and when it comes to that, I can think of no better example than Toronto's Brand of Sacrifice. They might be a little over the top for some people, but this is definitely one of the recommendations I've seen the most thank yous for over the past few years. Speaking of which, feel free to drop your own recommendations for each of these styles down in the comments.
Do it!
Anyways, that's probably a decent segue to some of the more technically inclined bands in the genre. Those on the outside may think of deathcore as just a bunch of simple grooves and caveman breakdowns for slightly edgier nu metal fans. But unless they're only scratching the surface, they'd be completely wrong. Once more, I'm thinking of the likes of Infant Annihilator, Barbarossa, Carnifex, Rings of Saturn, among many others. But my personal favorite continues to be the severely underrated Within the Ruins. Not only is this band unmatched in their guitar work, they have a completely unique guitar tone and overall sound that is instantly recognizable, not to mention they maintain an intense focus on hooks rather than just dick-measuring wankery.
Perfection.
On a related note, these technical bands can also get pretty progressive at times, delivering on lengthier, more complex arrangements that can really take you on a journey. In this realm, you've got bands like Fit for an Autopsy, who have more or less transcended the deathcore label with their appropriately titled Oh What the Future Holds. Also Veil of Maya and Croesus, but my go-to band in this subgenre since college is still Born of Osiris. They've gone in a much more metalcore direction in their later albums, but A Higher Place and especially 2011's The Discovery are considered unmissable classics. But maybe you do want something a little bit more brain dead to just flail your body to, and to those people, might I recommend a little slam. Much like Gent, I consider this label to be more of a guitar technique than a genre, so similarly it can be applied to multiple things from brutal death metal to deathcore, which in my mind makes it almost a perfect bridge between the two. But as for deathcore examples go, you've got stuff like Waking the Cadaver, Mental Cruelty, Vulvodynia, Signs of the Swarm, and my go-to pick, Within Destruction. Once more, their more recent releases find them toying with nu metal, metalcore, and even trap metal, but Void and Deathwish go so fucking hard and continue to top my favorite deathcore albums of all time. And again, I appreciate their dedication to memorable hooks and also a sense of humor in their music videos. Then you've also got bands who've taken this style to its natural conclusion by only further leaning into its most brutal mechanics. Bands that answer the question, what if rather than speeding up like the technical and progressive deathcore bands, we slowed things down to an absolute crawl? Known as down-tempo, these groups turn entire songs into an extended breakdown of sorts, with the likes of Black Tongue, Traitors, and Distant being among the most popular examples. We've also got groups that lean more heavily into a blackened atmosphere, of which I've already mentioned several examples over the course of this list, as I consider it to be more of a flavor and spice as opposed to its own full thing. Thy Art Is Murder comes to mind again, as do the somewhat lesser discussed Gomorrah, but my favorite in this category is easily Danish band Cabal. As always, you just can't beat Scandinavia when it comes to bringing that level of darkness. And then last but not least, as with any genre, you get those bands who like to get a little experimental, pulling in elements of anything that interests them. Searching experimental deathcore, you'll find things like Dr. Acula, We Butter the Bread with Butter, and Arsonists Get All the Girls. But when it comes to this category, there is currently one project to rule them all for me, and that's Darko. Formed by Josh Miller of Immure, Spite, and Glass Cloud, and Tom Barber of Chelsea Grin, their music will take you on a wild ride from chaotic, syncopated noise to drifting emotional atmosphere. One of my favorite bands to keep up with right now, period. That's really just a snapshot of bands and styles to get you started, but my hope is that between the video, the recommendations down in the comments, and this playlist, you'll at least be willing to expand your horizons. Also check out this video on why you're wrong about metalcore. And just remember, there is no such thing as a bad genre, it's just a matter of finding the good stuff. See you in the trenches.